It's a classic computing interview session.
So let me introduce everyone. So we have Robert Zaller, Bob, here on the panel. And then we also have Earl Ley and Pam Hollowman, whose camera isn't working, unfortunately, but maybe you can send us a picture of you.
Yeah.
And then Terrence Sheen. So and then we'll uncover like where you were and what you did and some of that stuff as we go. But let me read this to you. This is Wikipedia, right? Everybody's favorite source of the truth. So micro instrumentation and I can never say this word right. Telemetry? Telemetry?
Telemetry.
Dang it. I should have practiced before I got on here. Say it again.
Telemetry.
Telemetry. See? Just need someone to guide me. Telemetry. Systems Incorporated. So that's MITS, the computer that made the Altair, was an American electronics company founded in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that began manufacturing electronic calculators in 1971 and personal computers in 1975. So again, this is just the first little couple of sentences paragraph there, Wikipedia. It says more than that, but we're going to start with that. That doesn't tell the whole story, though, at all, because MITS existed before making calculators in 1971, right?
Right.
So maybe start off with that. Might be good.
Well, let's see. So we're Ed, Earl, and I, and actually Forrest Mims and the other guys were at the Air Force Weapons Lab, stationed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We were all in the Air Force. And so we were always thinking about life after the Air Force. And so we used to go to lunches together and have the good New Mexico cuisine. And we would talk with Ed. We'd all go out and talk about what to do. So Ed and I were very interested in flying, and Earl. We were all pilots and always talking about getting an airplane. So the idea was how to get our own airplane. That was the start of it.
They're talking about right now? What year or so is that?
1969, 68, 69.
Yeah. Yeah, this was
yeah, we were blue suiters. We weren't entrepreneurs yet, proven entrepreneurs, but we were dreamers. So there was a lot of dreaming that went in. We were going to do real estate, apartment houses. We didn't care what, but we knew we had to provide for our families. So a lot in common. In the very earliest of Ed Roberts, one day he called me to his office and he says, we got to keep an eye on this device called a microprocessor. And he had the patent on his desk for a 4-bit machine. So before there was an 8-bit machine, was a 4-bit machine. And he says, if this thing ever goes to an 8-bit machine, he says, it's going to break loose the digital world. And of course, at the time, we all lived in the analog world. So all of it new, all of it dreamy. And I think it kind of, when that 8-bit machine came out, Ed pounced. He knew what it could do. And so the story goes from there. But there was a dream stage before the company got started. And it was all a bunch of blue suiters running around eating chili tacos around Albuquerque for lunch.
Well, I was just going to comment. All three of you were pilots, and that was a big accomplishment of a dream, wasn't it? I mean, a lot of people dream of flying and never do it.
Yeah, but none of us flew for the Air Force. We flew privately. So they were mostly small single-engine land airplanes.
Yeah.
And one day leaving the lab, going to lunch, Ed announced that we had to have a goal for the company. And so knowing Ed, we were like, yeah, okay, Ed, what is it? And he announced it was to be able to own and operate an airplane for the benefit of a company out there somewhere in our dreamland. But it came true.
So it was the
So,
three of you that, oh, and Forrest Mims, right? Essentially the four of you that started
well,
MITS, or
this was, Forrest
preliminarily?
has a story because he worked in Ed's office. So evidently they were talking back then, but the main thing was, as Earl was saying, our main goal was the airplane and the business to finance the airplane. So that was a start. And eventually, yeah, we MITS actually had two airplanes, one single engine and one a business twin engine airplane eventually that he and I flew. And so that was the start. We had a lot of coordination meetings at his house, the famous Palo Duro house, and determining what we should do. What avenue should we take? And make a long story short, I was in missile guidance and electronics. Earl and I was, and he was in, weapon systems and laser division. And and MIMS was in model rocketry at that time. So with my background in missile guidance and electronics, we decided to start the company, and it was natural to say, well, we'll do it for model rockets. So I miniaturized the system to where it was a telemetry system. That means, sending data back from the rocket. A small little transmitter that could actually fit into a model rocket. Estes was the primary manufacturer of rockets at that time, model rockets.
I have two older brothers and my father, of course, and they were big into that in the late 60s, early 70s too.
And it was very popular because of the moon program. That was in the forefront of all the young kids. So we thought we were going to sell a ton of these. And so we actually met in the Ed's Palo Duro on Palo Duro Street in Albuquerque. Met at in his house and actually in the garage. And so we designed and built and sold about 100 of those. And then after that, we got interested in calculators. And so that's what started, we're looking for the next product, and that was calculators, mainly driven by Ed. So the other thing was we were all involved in computers too. The Air Force Weapons Lab had serial number, was it Earl, serial number 1 or 2? Two of the CDC 6600, the fastest computer in the world at that time.
I think it's considered the first official supercomputer. I think it gets that distinction.
Could be. Fastest one in the world, definitely. Done by Seymour Cray. And so the weapons lab had one, and we all programmed on it too. So we were in computer kind of early, right? That was early stages of computers. I had one semester only in programming. Earl, did you have any?
Yes, one in Fortran.
Yeah, and mine was an Algol, a forerunner. It was easy to transition into Fortran, which the CDC 6600 ran. But anyway, so
I was saying Algol, wasn't that kind of more preferred by the government too at the time? Am I right about that or no?
It was, the universities were selecting different ones, the simpler ones.
Yeah.
And it was considered to be simple. So it was similar to BASIC, and I had no trouble going into Fortran. So evidently those languages were pretty much the same. And so we had those computer backgrounds. Also, Ed was in cryptography or in his early Air Force years, and so again involved in some computer work. So that's why we kind of watched and knew what was going on with computers. So when the calculators came out, that was kind of a natural.
So to be clear, too, the transitional time between the Air Force and then you're talking about the the things for model rockets and starting MITS, you were still in the Air Force, and then as you and then everybody got out of the Air Force and you're running MITS, and now you're starting calculators. Is that right?
Just about. Some of us, were getting out in different stages,
Okay.
but just about that time, 1970, we put our time in,
Hmm.
and we're getting out. So looking for something to do. Some of us stayed in. Earl stayed in. Put in 20 years, Earl.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So and then some of us got out and started stuff. In 70, Ed was still in. I think Ed stayed in maybe another year and then got out. But some of the calculator stuff was going when he was still in. So that's how that.
So talk just a little bit now about the calculators, and of course, just for people that don't know, one of the big innovations from Intel, of course, was the microprocessor with the 4004 made for a calculator. So I think all the calculators MITS made obviously didn't have microprocessors in them. They
Correct.
all discrete circuitry. So maybe just talk about those times and the calculators and so on.
Well, actually, Ed and I embarked on a design to do our own calculator using just discrete chips, what I call discrete chips, but integrated circuits, small scale integrated circuits and registers and all, which was pretty hard at that time because some of the memory, if you could imagine this, was shift registers of 16 bits. 16 bits, not 16K, 16 bits, 16 so you had to put these together to get any kind of a storage element. So we started on that, and Ed talks about it in his interview with you, David. And it was difficult. It took a large circuit board to do this. And in fact, the family still has that layout of that circuit board, by the way. MITS, Ed's family still retains that, which is kind of interesting. So I told him, yeah, don't get rid of that. And but just at that time, Electronic Arrays came out with I think that was the name of the company, came out with a 6-chip set, if you could imagine, 6 chips to do a 4-function calculator. And somebody saw it. I don't know who saw it in an advertisement. We contacted them and they had this. So it was just lay it out the way that they told you. And there was a chipset that did a 4-function calculator, if you could imagine. I think 1 memory position and 4 functions. So that first calculator was the model 816 and used vacuum fluorescent greenish tubes, and very similar to
Nixie.
Nixie tubes. And the hobbyist had to wire all these in. Each one had like 10 wires to it, had to wire it into the board. But that was the first one.
How
And
popular
then,
was that? Was it very popular? Did it sell well?
yes. So thousands of those. And then after that, the next one was we moved to an LED one, which is called a model 1440. Pam, were you in on those calculators at all?
Just at the very end, Mr. Ning was selling in China and all of that. And actually, we sold one to my husband's machinist teacher at TVI and stuff. He was so excited. But I think that was the 940. That was after. Is that right?
Could be.
Yeah.
But I
But
also on a trip Well, actually, to visit Olson Electronics. Remember Olson Electronics, David? Well, you're too young for that. But they were the big catalog outfit. There was a number of wholesale, well, or hobbyist catalogs, not wholesale, but a lot of surplus. And Olson Electronics was one of the most popular ones, and they inquired about our calculators. Ed was a little bit of a shy person. He's kind of introvert. So, he gets me over and says, "Hey, Bob, you go up there and see what these guys want." So I took a 1440 and flew to Ohio, which is I went to school and lived in Cleveland, so that was good. I got to see my family. And so I made that introduction to them, which ended up, they became one of the prime movers of calculators, our products.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Pam, what year did you join the company?
Not till 73.
Oh, that late? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're in still pretty early. The big story, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Terrence, how about you? When did you join the company?
I joined in the latter part of 73.
Okay. All right. So you two come in around 73 then. Okay, a couple of years later. So we can get the
just before the Altair. They came
okay.
in for the
Yeah,
Altair.
the calculators were fading then. I think you had a couple handhelds, a metric converter and a handheld. I don't remember what that one was called anymore, but I remember coming into the tail end of that part of it. And then the design and all for the Altair was in process.
And so that was in 73, huh? So I guess so when was the first spark of like we're going to build this computer before it's even named or like this is what we're going to do and then that starts happening. When did that happen? I guess maybe 74 sometime, right? Early 74, right?
So Terry was present during those days, those rough days, right? Calculators were dwindling.
Yeah, and I came in initially as the purchasing person, the only one that they had there at MITS at the time, and I came in, and that was my function in the beginning. And I don't remember, wasn't quite a year, I guess, and then I was appointed general manager because the one they had left. And that's when I then got into the financial aspects of everything. So, yeah, an understatement is saying we were cash strapped.
You you ran the office essentially, right?
I actually had the non-engineering group, and Ed took the engineering group because I know nothing about engineering. So we kind of split it up that way. Worked out nicely.
That's good. Most people don't know both of those things. So
That's correct.
it takes people that can do it correctly, right? What?
Yeah.
So is there anything else to discuss or would you like to bring up about the calculator days? Any good stories or things people don't know enough about? Or it was a good run though for a while, right? Couple of years. Like things were the company's chugging along making calculator kits. Were they always kits?
Well,
No.
Were they ever did you ever fully what I'm trying to say, fully assemble them too?
Sure.
So assembled ones? Oh, you did?
Right, Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, we did. Even the handheld one, which is that 940 that I was talking about, you sold it in a kit or assembled.
And that was the third calculator, is that right? The third model?
That was a
MITS
little
introduced?
handheld one, four
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
About how
Yeah,
many
just-
models do you think there were ultimately through MITS?
as I recall, a secret of the sauce was Ed came up with injector mold plastic case for the calculators. And that would be something that would excite the hobbyist who was going to build his own calculator with his own soldering iron. And yeah, the I only have half of that story, but But as I recall, that put a little magic in the sauce.
That was with the very first one, right? Starting with the first one?
Calculator.
Yeah, I seem to remember him mentioning that to me. I assume it's maybe in the recording, but I remember him saying something about it. I thought maybe it's off camera. That was a big deal, yeah.
Well,
because it looked very
clincher for the hobbyist.
Right. Instead of looking like some kit, it looked like a professional device when you got done with it, right?
Yeah.
Actually, that kind of set the standard, didn't it, with Heathkit and everything else? They, at least that makes me think of Heathkit.
Yes. See, an interesting story, if you bring up Heathkit, is they came out with an advertisement during that time that introducing big splash full page ad, the first kit calculator. And Ed quickly got the lawyer to write them a letter and said, no, we were already out there. So, and they retracted that. They quit advertising that as their first. So,
wow.
Yeah. But let's see, you asked about how many. So we had 2 models of the desktop, and try to use that case as much as possible, that standard case, because in those days it was expensive to get that injection mold made, like on the order of, I think it was $10,000. That was a lot of money at that time. That was like a half of a reasonable house. And so, yeah, we really ran that a lot. And then got that handheld case, and there was a number of models of that, as Pam was saying, and the scientific model and a couple of other ones. But just about that time, the chipset was getting smaller, of course, and then TI and HP started getting into the market, and with their marketing and their wherewithal, they just overtook what MITS was doing, and as we said a lot of times, for the cost of our parts, they were selling the whole calculator because they were buying in such volume. So MITS just couldn't compete. So the whole thing was, you asked about how the Altair got started. Well, we needed another product. So to rewind a little bit, so it was the model Rocketry telemetry system, and then that faded. So we looked for another product that was calculators, and then that ran for a year or two, or looks like 3, right? 2 or 3. And then we looked for another product, and it was actually some test equipment. And so I designed a couple of those products, a digital voltmeter and a function generator, again, to market to the hobbyist world. There were, rather than YouTube videos, everybody was building things. And so these guys were out looking for test equipment. This was going to be cheap test equipment. And so we designed that, and then that went, sold a couple thousand of those. You'd sell about 1,000 of each. And then that faded. So what was the next product? We got to come up with something. And the 8080, everything came together. So here, Intel introduces the 8080, which looks like it was a computer chip that actually had some capabilities, and we needed a product. So it was, Ed contacted the magazine. They were looking for a product, a microprocessor type product to put on the cover of the magazine. They promised that if MITS could design one, they would put it on the front cover of that January 75 issue. So it was a mad dash to get that computer designed. We were pressed.
And it was partly in response, right, to the issue of radio electronics kind of prompted a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like outdo them, at least from popular electronics.
Yeah. And what was that they talked about that other computer.
The Mark 8?
Yeah, it might have been the Mark 8.
Yeah, that's what I was looking up. I think it came out July 74. So that was the July 74 issue. So when that happened, I guess, of course, that, yeah.
So there was competition amongst the magazines also. So Popular Electronics was trying to outdo them. And so we had to put something together, and it relied on some earlier designs that I did for some products that were in rack mounts. So we had to come up with a case quickly. And of course, we relied on what we knew. And back then, rack mounts were the in thing. We were in the Air Force, in laboratories. You know, rack mounts were a standard dimension slide in case that would go into these racks called racks, metal racks. And so the natural was to use that as a case. So that's why it was so large. And
so when considering the case for the Altair as well, I guess it would be silly to think about the vacuum formed case, right? Because it wouldn't be tough enough for the weight and everything of the computer power supply.
Right.
That was never considered, probably.
No, and everything had to be large. You know, there weren't miniature devices at that time. So I happened to design for another customer, design something in those rack mounts. Well, we designed a lot in the Air Force, so we were familiar with them. So there were two competitors on that case, and one was Optima, and I can't remember the other one. The other one was actually an extruded aluminum case that I preferred. I kind of liked it. It was more sturdy, and but the deciding point was, and it was decided by Ed, was the way that the front panel mounted in this Optima case. It was, it really fit together for what we wanted to do. That panel just mounted in there easily. So we went with the Optima. So that was Ed's choice on the Optima.
Let me ask you this before we move forward with more specific Altair. Well, it's related, I guess. But what was it like at MITS during that time of, I'm going to say late 73, working up to developing the Altair, and you're inventing it, right? And trying to test it and everything else. But like, what was it like at MITS as far as, because I'm assuming sales just continue to sort of dwindle on everything. And maybe the company's just barely making it, right? Up until the point of the announcement of that product, or just maybe you all can talk about that.
When I was appointed general manager, the first thing I did was put a list together of personnel that I felt we could lay off and still be successful running as a company in the lean position. So I took that into Ed and we talked about it, and he said, it's your choice. So I unfortunately laid off, I think maybe 14, 15 people, I don't remember, and put us down pretty much. So that meant all of us were doing multi-functions, at least from my aspect of it. So Pam and I, and the time I had hired another person, of course, to take over purchasing, we had a printing machine so we could print our own manuals, and we used to assemble them in a table outside of the engineering department. And that's how we kept going for a while. And then we had a very nice banker who worked with us quite a bit, and he helped us a lot over process of some things with it. So, but yeah, that was the first initial part. And then we started negotiating with suppliers for pricing of product too. So to make that better.
Mainly that was your doing, right, Terry? You negotiated with those
yes.
suppliers. Yeah, tell them a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, with one of them, when we got into the PC boards, we had a customer, a vendor in California, and we owed him a fair amount of money. So I talked to him and made a deal with him. I mentioned that if we give you an order and you go ahead and produce the product for us and ship it, I'll pay you, or we'll pay you the money for that order, but you have to apply it to the old balance so we can get the old balance cleared and gradually catch up. And, you know, he almost had no choice because otherwise he was not going to have any money. So we worked a deal with him, and that's what we did to do our PC boards. And that helped us a lot from that. And that was only one of the customers. We did things like that with several of them. And then I guess when we were already into the Altair for a while, we had a distributor, Kramer Electronics, which later became Arrow, and they bought a lot of our inventory back from us, and then resold it to us. And in the process, that was about, I think, what, Bob, like $200,000, and we were talking about it a while back, a product that they took back. And when we repurchased it from them, it was the original price. There was no elevated price or anything like that. But that allowed us some cash to be able to do some things also and move ahead from that area.
Still, during that transitional time, you're working on the Altair, you know, the next big product. You're just trying to survive. You're cutting staff and other things. But was there any other way the company made extra money to make it by, or simply had to cut to stay in existence?
Hey, there's one thing that I would add is that some of us took leave. So, you know, we knew either the cash was tight. I mean, you know, we're living on the credit card. So some of us left voluntarily. And so I did some side jobs with who I knew best was the Air Force. So I contracted and did some sophisticated electronic design for the Air Force Weapons Lab and their sister company, Sandia Corporation, who is also in the weapons development area. So I did a couple of those designs, just products actually, just to you know, bring in a paycheck. But a lot of us would just forego the paychecks during that time.
I remember I was probably in the accounting department at first when I started, and we were really shorthanded in a lot of places. Like Terry said, there were 5 of us walking around the table putting together the, you know, the mailings that we were going to do for the Altair and all of that. But we were all, I would say that we probably were down to minimal employment at that time. You know, I worked in accounting, I worked in marketing, I worked in, and also, you know, even in the parts department and all that. So, yeah, and we kept the people on the line from, you know, that were working. Bob and his people were out there, you know, they stayed as busy as they could, but from when I walked in, the line was really down to, you know, to minimal people. They were sitting at the tables and staying busy, but they were probably 1/3 of the people had left. I don't know for positive. Terry would know more about that, but yeah, we were all working, and I mean, Ed ins, instilled us to, you know, keep working for the company, and it was worth it.
Yeah. Yep. That's one quality of Ed. You know, he was charismatic and could talk to you, you know, and keep everybody going. He was that quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Was he very optimistic and very like, obviously he believed in what the direction you guys are going in and building this microcomputer and so on?
Oh yeah, I do. I mean, we would have meetings, and he was so positive. I mean, the 8080 chip he thought was going to, you know, really come back and make it for us. He was always very positive and instilled that confidence in us. So yeah, it was a tight group for a while, but yeah, he was really good to us. And
And he was right.
yeah, oh
Even
yeah,
though
Yes, he
the
was.
yeah, even though the Z80 was sort of, dominated a little bit later on, but that's just a revamped 8080 essentially. So yeah, it did.
Hey, is that the way you saw it, Terry, too? About
Yeah, and I was just going to add, at one point, we were the largest user of the 8080 product
Hmm.
uh, in the area. I mean, in the whole area, as far as I know, in the country. And so that made it something that we
Yeah,
could be proud about. And we also got a super price on it, and that was partially because of Ed's negotiating with it, not what we did, but he negotiated with the president of the company at Intel and got us a
yeah.
super price, and the distributor was selling them, and they couldn't even come close to our product price. So we actually bought direct from them, and it was partially Ed's doing.
Well, go along with that, the MITS Altair was the best-selling computer in the world
Yes, for a
at one
while it
point.
was.
So,
And it was the
and
only one for a while that was portable.
Let me
and
make
also
a little input here.
mhm.
The MITS company, as a hobbyist company, had built a following, if you will, of hobbyists who, in a sense, were sensitive to something new coming out of MITS in Albuquerque, of all places, right? And the other part, I know Bob has emphasized this with me a couple of times, that the hobbyist really liked the instructions for the kits and how to build them. And so later that becomes the technical data of the electronics, if you will. So I think MITS had a real good quality of instructions on how to build the kits, which in turn built a following, which in turn had MITS in a pretty good position as the Altair broke out, if you would. So that I think that was really cool about the company. It's how they paid attention to their hobbyist customers.
Well, and the other thing to add to that was people started computer stores to sell the Altair product. So we created something that hadn't been before also. We were pretty innovative in those times in some of those areas.
Right. Also, yeah, the first really computer conventions, user groups, publications, software,
Correct.
right?
magazine,
Accessory boards, and yeah. So, so maybe this would be a good, there's so much we could talk about for hours, probably, right? So we're gonna avoid that and just keep it, short, because maybe we can do this again too soon. There's so much to talk about, but I think a good time to go into now. So you're gearing up to introduce the Altair. So maybe just you all can talk about what it was like trying to get that right. Like you're trying to finalize it, not just for the magazine, but of course to sell it, right? So it'd be a success. And then maybe finish up with the magazine comes out and then what happens?
Well, so you're asking about what happens after the magazine hits the cover of, or the Altair hits the cover of the magazine, and you could just say chaos, right? 1,000 orders come in, which was unexpected. There was just that prototype done, crudely done, just really for the photograph. Then
So because the story goes it was lost on shipment, and then you all had already decided to redo the bus, the architecture. So you're creating the Altair bus. So that wasn't finalized yet when the magazine hit.
right,
So you almost had to redo the computer before you could even sell it.
yeah,
Okay.
And what was nice about that time, what was nice about it was that people send in cash with the orders. So you could imagine. So now, fortunately, MITS,
A Ponzi scheme for at least a little while, but then you dug
right,
yourself
which,
out, right?
Yes.
yeah, which I understand nowadays is not too likely, and the government frowns upon that. But but in a way that really helped us out because now we had that money to actually do the product correctly. So it was like 2-3 months of chaos and designing the boards, getting the final end of it in position. And unfortunately, there were some things designed for the hobbyist. And Ed's idea was, oh, to save a buck, we'll just have that hobbyist do all kinds of work. And that was the little jumpers on the motherboard. There's 100 jumpers between these two connectors, and it was a bear. But we used to say, give the hobbyist something to do. So they put these jumpers in. But what happened was and then there was a bunch of wires from the front panel into the bus, into the boards. But what happened was that was detrimental later because a lot of the Altairs were people were ordering the already built ones. So here the people had to assemble them, and now you got all of these wires to put in, which wasn't an efficient assembly. They should have been all, of course, done automatically or with ribbon cables. So anyway, that was part of it.
I'll even gear up for that. Like, where'd you find these people to assemble Altair computers, correctly, and efficiently and price consciously and so on?
So that was our advantage in Albuquerque, is that there was a lot of military and government work, NASA work. So we actually had people in assembly that were NASA trained for human flight. They were that skilled. It was special, special qualifications for these people, and that's who was assembling the Altairs. But so we had a good quality pool to draw from in Albuquerque. That was one advantage for us.
And I was serializing them as they in a notebook.
Okay.
So speak about that a little bit. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, as we were selling them, we wanted to keep track of them. And before they went out, we assigned the serial numbers, whether they were the kits or the assembled. And I had a notebook. And as the orders came in, we assigned serial numbers so that, they had an order in our system. Yeah, and it was in a notebook. It wasn't on a computer at that time.
Hey, Pam.
Yeah.
And now that serial number, if you follow the older computers, the collectors,
yeah,
those serial numbers are a big deal.
Arguably, a kit is more valuable.
Yes,
because it's earlier too. I mean, not always, right? But it's considered that way.
Yeah.
So maybe let's say it's now spring 1975. So you are right around there. You've finalized the design and you're producing. I guess now you're producing, assembling kits and or computers, and everything's getting shipped out. So just the place is just going crazy and hiring dozens of new people and just gearing up. Talk about that a little bit now through 1975.
Hey, let me say one thing about that. There's 1,000 stories that go, but from the technical standpoint, since I was involved in the engineering end of it, we had young kids, you might say, teenagers showing up at the front door. And they would say, we want to work on this. on this computer will work for nothing. We'll come in, just let us work on that. And of course, Ed would say, it's against the law. You can't work for nothing. So, they would come in on minimum wage and then get promoted. But and then, of course, the story is people would drive across the country, or there's stories at least from Silicon Valley, to come drive at all night long to get to MITS to pick up a kit. I mean, that's how desirable they were. So the problem was we couldn't produce them fast enough. That was MITS' total problem. So at that time, we're getting 1,000 a month or more orders in, and the backlog is growing. People are hollering for them, clamoring for them. So in a way, it was exciting, but for the rest of us, it was, hectic. You're trying to get these boards out, test them. So let me say one thing about the testing, and then Pam will have to say about your literature that you put out. But so testing the Altair, the technicians were on the assembled units. They had to be checked out. And so the interesting thing was, we would say, well, how do you check these out? How do you know that computer, that assembled Altair was okay before you shipped it out? And the key was, they said, if it ran Lunar Lander. They said the last thing is we load Lunar Lander in, which is, paper tape, not very long. But if it ran Lunar Lander, it was good to go.
Yes.
So that was kind of thing. And Pam, I wanted to say, I remember you guys walking around that round table, putting those booklets together. You did all kinds of booklets, right? The assembly manuals, what else was that?
Well, all I know is Terry probably knows more about what we were doing, but I mean, I certainly got involved in all the advertising stuff, and we had that computer notes and all of those that we produced ourselves, printed, put together, and we did them regularly. So we were doing that. I don't know that I ever had to do a manual, though. Terry, is that probably was done by another group? I don't know. I might have.
I think once we went to the more professional, that was done by somebody else. I don't remember who did the printing on that anymore, but it was out of the house. Because we didn't have the capabilities of making it look as good as it should have.
Yeah.
And computer notes and the ads are outstanding. They're good looking, professional looking ads. They all, what I'm picturing, most of them always were.
Yeah,
and
they were well
notes,
done.
Yeah, and computer notes is well done too, which I know you can find some of them on the Internet Archive. You can, people can go view some of them. I'll try to add some links.
Well, Dave Bunnell, didn't he do some of those, Pam?
Oh, right. He joined as he was doing a lot of that stuff a little bit later on.
Yes,
right?
he was doing some of the advertising and all for that, and helped, I think, with the advertising part of it, hadn't he? From what I remember.
And, from my perspective, because I didn't start getting into computer history and collecting and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't know anything about the Altair and all that kind of stuff till, maybe 1990s, somewhere there. So, I mean, it's all secondhand looking into the past. But I was a big Mac person. So that's what got me started in my Apple Lisa and all that. So the point I was going to make is I think it was Macworld. Either David, he went on to, be an editor for like Macworld. I think it was. Could have been Mac User. So I knew who he was, because I used to read them, in over here's my Mac magazines. But yes, I was familiar with him. Then I found out, wow, he used to work for MITS and Ed Roberts, and that was kind of neat, to learn that later on.
He did personal computing and
okay. Yeah, he did a number of computer publications.
Yeah.
So at that time, I just wanted to add, so I don't know if it was Bunnell that did it, or about that time, they brought in some professional advertising firms that did a lot of those ads. But I think it was David Bunnell that came up with the famous ones that MITS is known for, with the guys at the pool table, and
Yes.
which I thought were quite creative. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before we go this time, maybe you all could, I didn't want to make it all about Ed Roberts, so we haven't. It's about you all, but maybe now you can speak a little bit to some of maybe say something about Ed, and I don't know, but what you knew, how you knew him to be, and just, or anything you want really, but if you want to touch on Ed, that'd be nice.
I think that's appropriate for Ed, because definitely he was the one. We went over a little bit of his personality. Great guy, and we owe the company to him, that's for sure. But what I found him was honest and trustworthy. Never any inclination of a shady deal, and yet jovial, had a good sense of humor, and always a positive attitude. And I might even say maybe a little over optimistic, which is in hindsight, is a characteristic of an entrepreneur. Got to be a little bit overly optimistic. And then he was able to then transmit that to the rest of the workers, so he kept the group together during hard times. But he could do that.
The other thing that I wanted to say is with Bob and Earl here, they knew him from before, and he picked some good people that knew stuff. And then there was Eddie Curry, and and he let his friends come in and make the company better. It was really he was a force to that to know things, but also to let other people be part of it and give them a part to. But he expected you to do the best. He did expect that. I remember when I applied, I know I got a call and the president wants to speak to you, Pam. My husband had answered the phone and he said, the president wants to speak to Pam. Can we talk? But that was them. But he was so good. And, all of those guys that he brought on from, either work or even from his childhood and stuff, they did well for MITS. So.
Yeah, I think too is the word I would use is he was an optimist. And like Bob said, that's necessary to keep something going. Otherwise, everything falls by the wayside. The thing I liked about him too is he pretty much didn't get into my side of the business unless I went to him and had questions or wanted some clarification on something. So from a supervisor, he was great, and the president of the company was even better. He kind of worked where he knew he had his strengths, and where his weaknesses were, he let other people do that, like Pam and the people that we had in accounting and myself. And I think that was very beneficial.
Yeah. Ed there are two parts there. Open-minded, looking for new ideas. And then our military service, which was at the point, he was in the laser division, and the laser itself hadn't been invented 6 years before he was on active duty in a laser lab. And so believing in the possibilities of technology, and especially electronics, we grew up, Ed and Bob and I, as the electronic hobbyist, if you will, with Radio Shack as their catalog of social interaction, you might say. And but he had been footprinted by the military of futuristic possibilities. And then combined with his open-mindedness, he just was himself, just kind of a natural in his natural environment. He was happy in his natural state right there doing what he loved to do. But there was a lot of work.
Well, the three of you were all military, and you had that angle of discipline and a good chain of command mindset. That's something I sometimes miss in the corporate world. Defined chains of command. I often tell people that there's lots of things I can point out wrong with the military, right? When I was in it, but defined chain of commands. Those
I
are good.
agree.
Yep.
The other thing that I might add about the military is, we were on the leading edge of everything.
Oh, yeah. But you guys were in.
Almost an unlimited budget, and we could just buy whatever we needed to experiment with, and we were talking about recognizing the possibilities of the microprocessor. We were on that front edge all through our career, which is a big advantage.
But I'm going to wrap it up for now. I hope. What do you guys think? Maybe, and Pam, guys and ladies, maybe we can try to do this again. I think now we've better established, obviously, the things we talked about, but some other things we can talk about. I think it'd be good if you guys are game.
David, there's got to be 1,000 stories.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hesitate talking about it because you just don't know which facet you want to talk about. But so many things happened. It was just a fantastic time. But it was too bad when you're in it, you're so busy and overwhelmed that you don't appreciate it.
Yes.
And I've watched other videos of guys that were in the same boat, and they all say the same thing, because you really can't foresee the future. That you could talk about it in hindsight, but when you're in it, you just don't know what's going to come up. So you're half worried. You're just not interested in jubilation.
But thank you all again for joining me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and please check out some of my other interviews at classiccomputing.com.